under the payroll taxes of 6.2% paid by both workers and their employers, but those taxes only apply to income up to $147,000 as of 2022. Their bills called for phasing out the cap over the next 7 years. For contributions above the cap, it will provide additional benefits. And Sanders and Warren proposal would apply the payroll tax on all income above $250,000 a year, including capital gains, while also raising taxes on net investment income and certain business income. The Sanders and Warren bill calls for giving beneficiaries an extra $2,400 per year or $200 per month. The proposal includes a higher minimum benefit everybody, indexed to 125% of the federal poverty line. The National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare has also endorsed all of the plans. President Biden said the U.S. is not in a recession despite Thursday's GDP report, saying it is no surprise that the economy is slowing down amid inflation. The U.S. economy shrank in the spring for the second consecutive quarter, meeting the criteria for recession as record high inflation and higher interest rates forced consumers and businesses to pull back on spending. Gross domestic product, the broadest measure of goods and services produced across the economy, shrank by 0.9% on an annualized basis in the 3-month period from April to June. Biden touted the job market, saying it remains historically strong, with unemployment at 3.6% and more than 1 million jobs created in the second quarter alone. We finally have an update on stimulus timelines from lawmakers. New inflation relief legislation has already been approved. Another batch of payments begin going out starting in just a few weeks. And also watch to the end to learn how to receive the latest stimulus payments. Time is running out for Massachusetts to offer one-time tax rebate checks that could see payments being sent out in October. Individual measures have already cleared both sides of the Senate and House, and once the bill is approved by the Republican governor, Charlie Baker, individual filers will receive a $250 rebate, and married couples who file jointly will get $500 as well. Governor Baker told reporters that he plans to sign the bill, which he hopes is the start of more tax relief efforts, given that the cost of everything has gone up. Lawmakers have until Sunday to get a final bill to Governor Baker. Massachusetts is just one of the many states to address rampant inflation and the growing threat of recession with tax rebate and stimulus checks. Florida, for example, is queuing up $450 inflation relief payments. Indiana Senate Republicans are also unveiling a bill to combat the rising cost of inflation, which represents a clear break from the stimulus plan that Indiana Governor Eric Holcomb proposed that would give every Indiana resident a $225 tax refund. Senate Bill 3 proposes that inflation be addressed by placing a cap on the state sales tax on gas and suspending the 7% sales tax on utilities. Under the proposed legislation, the sales tax on gas cannot exceed 0.29 cents a gallon.
We were told we have 1 minute, so here goes. This is the lightning round. First of all, I want to thank everyone for being here, and I want to echo what Senator Schatz said about the folks behind us representing so many Americans, young and old, who have made climate change such a priority all these years. We would not be standing here today on the verge of passing major legislation which will lower the cost of prescription drugs and help
Reserve, let's talk about this. Economists say the type of job growth that's expected in October is not going to sway the central bank from its aggressive rate hiking path. Jerome Powell said Wednesday that the Fed could reduce the size of its interest rate hikes, but it may need to raise rates to an even higher than expected level just to stop inflation. Economists expect that rate hikes will eventually slow the economy enough to crimp the job market up. So one economist told CNBC that the Fed is now targeting the labor market and is willing to go even further on this. Recent data shows job openings surged in September despite the Fed's effort to cool the historically hot labor market. And this has helped the highest inflation increase since the mid-1980s. Early employment openings for the month totaled 10.7%. And also, if the October payrolls are much stronger than expected, the Fed may not slow its pace of hiking when it next meets on December 13 and 14. The slowdown in housing could actually start to show up slightly in October's jobs, but builders appear to be holding on to workers for now because of labor shortages. Weakness in housing could ripple into financial services if consumers spend less, and that's not something that everybody wants to see. All we know is that President Biden has to do something about this and send out the stimulus payments before it's too late. If you guys agree, tell me in the comments down below.
And we had, I think the guys were with me, the Congress were with me when I invited the CEOs of the auto companies to the White House lawn in the back, behind the White House. And I talked about automobiles and I talked about electric vehicles. At the time, Amy Barr was Chairman Barr of General Motors was suing the state of California because you had a higher standard for emissions than the rest of the country, and they said they couldn't do that. Well, she left that meeting and she dropped the suit. Called me up and said they're going to go all electric by 2035. Every other company has signed up to do the same thing. So we're working with the auto industry to transition to electric vehicle future, providing tax credits to buy electric vehicles, as well as
2% target, and cautioned that it might not be easy. He also said that it will come at the expense of a 3.6% unemployment rate that is just above the lowest level since the 60s. The U.S. economy saw growth contract at a 1.4% pace in the first quarter of 2022, but tighter monetary policies has added to concerns about a steeper downturn and has sparked criticism in addition to the 75 basis points in interest rate hikes. The Fed has also halted its monthly bond buying program and will begin shedding some of the $9 trillion in assets that is required starting next month. Big changes have just been confirmed by the federal government, and the IRS is now warning American people that they may have to return some stimulus money. Over the last 2 years, millions of people in the country were financially given aid from the federal government in the form of 3 separate stimulus checks. If you received the full amount for each payment, it came to $3,200 in crisis relief. The last check started arriving in households back in March 2021. But it turns out, not everyone was supposed to keep the money.
And Rich and I showed up, we found that we had hundreds of thousands of borrowers who were eligible to have their loans discharged because they were disabled. They were still paying on those loans. We've now discharged those loans. We had hundreds of thousands of borrowers who claimed they had been cheated by a for-profit college. We've discharged hundreds of thousands of those loans. We have more in progress. And the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, which made an important promise to young people that if they spent their careers in public service, we would make sure those loans would be affordable and they would be canceled after 10 years. But only 7,000 people had ever received public service loan forgiveness. That number is now up to 130,000, with more than 1 million seeing progress toward cancellation, thanks to some of the changes that Rich has overseen. So we're working really hard on the challenge of student debt. We're also calling for new investments in Pell Grants, free community college, similar to some of the work the governor has done here. Stronger protections against colleges that leave students with loans they can't afford to repay. A new repayment plan that will be much more affordable for students. So it's an all hands on deck effort here to do whatever we can within our power to make sure that loans are affordable and that people aren't left with debts they can't afford. The Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program is a really important part of it. It's very important to President Biden. And I'll ask Rich to talk a little bit more about the changes that he's implemented there and some of the progress that we're making. Thank you.
James, thank you. Amen to all of the above, and we share the exact same passions and priorities that the President and you and